right now. Today is the day that you choose to change the rest of your life. It is time to turn your setback into the greatest comeback story ever told, and nobody is more capable than you. This is the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast, the future #1 weight loss podcast in the world. I am your host, Donato Russo. I hope you enjoy the show today. If this is your first time here and you enjoy the show, please subscribe and spread the word of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast wherever you are and to whomever will listen. If you'd like to connect on social media or wherever else, check out my Linktree page, Linktree/the Ranting Weight Watcher. Let's connect today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you may be listening, thanks for making me part of your day. This is episode 222 of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast. Man, I have so much to talk about today. I don't want to waste any time. I want to get right into this. So let's get into this. Journey updates. All right, so this is representing the week of February 23rd through March 1st, 2025. Total steps taken, 90,757 steps. This is an average steps per day of 12,965. Average total miles walked for that week, 35.25 miles. This is an average of 5 miles walked per day. And for all of that work, I got a 1.8 pound gain. Current weight is 226.2 pounds. I am officially 30.6 pounds away from the 200 pound loss goal that I set 6 years ago. I really want to talk to you guys today about something that happened to me over the weekend. Now, many of you have been listening for quite a while here, and you know that I had gastric bypass way back in 2004, and you know the story. I gained most of the weight back, and I talk about it once in a while on the podcast. I'm not even really sure how many episodes I mention this, but I always talk about the consequence to the choices we make. Every choice we make has a consequence, right? Even if the choice you make is perceived as a good choice, there's a consequence. So, in other words, if I choose not to eat the junk food sitting on the table at the party, the consequence is I don't get to eat the junk food sitting at the table at the party, right? People will try to make choices in any given moment, and rarely do they think about the consequences of the actions they take. If they perceive the action as good, they're going to take the action, right? And even if the action seems good and every sign in society says this is good, there comes some sort of consequence. Now, is the consequence known right away? 9 times out of 10, it's not, right? And that's kind of what happened to me. So I had gastric bypass back in 2004, right? 2 consequences came. One is normal, and everybody kind of deals with something like this. You don't have to have gastric bypass to have this happen to you. And the other one was a direct result. So after gastric bypass, or years after I had gastric bypass, it was discovered that anybody who gets gastric bypass eventually has a gallbladder problem, so they need to have their gallbladder removed. And now, if you go to have this weight loss surgery now, it is common practice to do both at the same time, because eventually you're going to have a problem with the gallbladder anyway, so it might as well be done, right? So that was something years later, after having the gastric bypass surgery, I ended up having it. Now, it took quite a while. So granted, 2004, I had the surgery. And I had the gallbladder problem after I moved to Florida. So that would have been 2012. So probably 2013, 2014, somewhere around there, that I had the gallbladder problem and had the gallbladder removed. Now, the other consequence that I never realized until extremely recently was in the process of getting the particular procedure that I had, the Roux-en-Y gastric bypass surgery. In the process of that, one of the side effects is hypoglycemia. Essentially, anybody who's had, I'm not even sure of the exact percentage, but a good portion of the people that have had my exact procedure have developed hypoglycemia. So many that they actually had to change it and create a separate diagnosis because it's not the same as traditional hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is like your sugar runs low naturally, so you have to have, something sweet to keep it up, right? They had to give the hypoglycemia that I have a different name because it doesn't work that way. It's kind of like the opposite of diabetes, to be honest, right? So they call it post-bariatric hypoglycemia. So what happens is, because my body has been compromised and whole sections of my intestine are no longer used, hence the name bypass, right? So my body cannot break down sugar the same way it used to, right? So I developed and essentially gave myself the choice to have gastric bypass surgery, essentially gave me hypoglycemia. That's what I talk about when I say the consequence to your actions. It may have been the only thing to save my life at the moment because I allowed myself to get so crazy and so big that I got desperate. Now, had I stuck with half the things I ever tried and had I just never given up, maybe I wouldn't be in this position now, right? But that's not the point of this. The point is to introduce the scenario. So this hypoglycemia works differently, right? So if in the event that I create a sugar spike, right, my body immediately creates too much insulin to then almost immediately drop the sugar levels below normal. The thing is, the caveat here is, if I never eat the sugar, if I never create the spike, I never create the dip either, right? So it's different than traditional hypoglycemia in the sense that there's a lot more control. Someone who has hypoglycemia traditionally can't really control it. Out of nowhere, their sugar is going to drop, and they need to have something for emergency to bring up their sugar level. I have created such a science to this condition that I know that within 2 hours of ingesting sugar, that I will have a crash. Okay? And so this brings me to Saturday night. So as I record right now, it's Tuesday night, March 4th. So this past Saturday. I am out to dinner and eating whatever and decided to have dessert. I chose a dessert that I thought would be the smallest dessert on the menu. And to me, banana pudding, which was my choice, a cup of banana pudding, was innocent in regards to the amount of the sugar spike that would come from it. I didn't really take it. I took it for granted. Let me just say it like that. Because of the size of the dessert, I took it for granted that this would cause any true damage. Another thing that happens, like, so when I decide to have a dessert, we go out to dinner traditionally, right? We eat the dessert, we come home, and we're home for the night after that. We're not going anywhere after that. So if I expect a crash to come, I know that I'll be home. So this is where my Saturday night takes a turn. My daughter had a birthday party, and that's part of the reason we went out. She had a birthday party. We were trying to occupy our time before we had to go pick her up, kind of a thing like that. So we decided to go out to dinner. Now, we go home because there was still a lot of time between the end of the party and when we were done having dinner. We go home. And because I'm taking for granted the size of the dessert meaning anything, essentially the size of the dessert is meaningless in the broad scheme of things now that I'm looking back with, hindsight. But in my mind, it meant something to have a smaller dessert, and it wouldn't be a big deal. So 9:00 comes, the party's over. This is almost exactly 2 hours after we finish dinner. Again, I'm taking for granted the sugar spike because of the size of the dessert, right? I get in the car, and my wife and I go to the house that where my daughter is. Now, there are 3 things that happen to me when I have a sugar crash. One of those things is blurred vision, okay? Another one of those things is disorientation, severe disorientation. And the third one is involuntary jerking movements, right? Like my hands will start shaking uncontrollably. Any one of these things is like my warning to go and grab something to drink. Now, the go-to whenever this happens is always something to drink, because what you drink is in your bloodstream in less than a minute. Like, we're talking like 30 seconds here. Whatever you put in your mouth, that's a drink. The contents of that drink are in your bloodstream 30 seconds. So if your sugar is dropping, it's better to drink juice than it is to eat, say, something sweet, like a piece of cake or whatever it is. Because the sugar from that juice is going to be in my bloodstream in less than a minute, and already I'll be improving. As I'm driving on Saturday night, all 3 of those warning signs hit me at the same time. I don't realize it, though. There are sections of that drive that I don't remember whatsoever. And please remember that I'm the one at the wheel. There are sections of that drive that I can't even picture in my mind. It's just completely blank. And it wasn't until I was about to miss a turn, and my wife yells, like, "What are you doing? You're going to miss the turn." That I realize, wait a second, what just happened? It was almost like I was starting to black out or something, or go to sleep, whatever the case is. But I couldn't even see, at that point, I realized I couldn't see the road in front of me. So I turn into the driveway of the complex we're going to pick up my daughter. After we check in with the security place, they let us in the gate, and that's when I realized, because my hand started jerking on the steering wheel, that I'm having a sugar crash. And at that point, I'm also just a few feet away from the front door of the person's house. So all I'm thinking about at this moment, and I tell Joanne that I'm having a sugar crash. So right away she wants to switch places with me, but I'm essentially a few feet from the parking space. I make it to the parking space. I park the car. I get out to get ready to get into the passenger side. Joanne walks in and to pick up my daughter, and she asks them for anything with sugar in it. She essentially came out with a can of soda, a little piece of cake, and a handful or so of M&Ms. This is what she came out with. Naturally, because of what I had just said to you, my first inclination was to grab the soda. I popped the can, I started drinking it, and I immediately started to feel relief. Immediately. I was like, okay, it's going to be fine. Joanne's driving home, it's going to be fine. And while I'm sitting there holding a plate in my hand that has this cake in it, I eat the cake and I keep continually sipping on the soda. I finished the little piece of cake they gave me. I finished the M&Ms they gave me. And I go to grab this soda can again to keep going. And I realize, oh my God, it's a 0 sugar soda. And this is the core of why I'm telling you all this. A 0 sugar soda, a soda that diabetics all over this country are told is safe for them to drink because it doesn't have sugar. A 0 sugar soda gave me just as quick relief as a glass of orange juice. The glass of orange juice is my typical go-to when this happens. I was handed a can of soda. I drank it without thinking. I felt the relief come from a 0 sugar soda. They have the diabetics of this country believing it's okay to drink diet soda and 0 sugar soda. This is safe for diabetics to drink. And meanwhile, I used it and felt it relieve my problem of having low blood sugar. In that moment, my sugar was crashing. And so what happens then? If my sugar is crashing, it's below normal. I drink this and it comes back up. If you've never felt this, you won't understand. But essentially, it's almost immediate, that the feeling. When you put the orange juice to your lips, the feeling is almost immediate of regaining all of your normal feelings. And the one thing that comes from it that can't really be avoided is the feeling of just the energy from you, from the whole fight, from the whole process. That energy is just wiped from your body. So whatever energy you thought you had, just gone. And it doesn't really matter what time of day, because my very first time ever experiencing this, I didn't know I had hypoglycemia, right? And I didn't know anything about post-bariatric hypoglycemia either. I was at a breakfast place, and it was a place in Connecticut. If you're from Connecticut, you probably know about it. It's in Milford, Connecticut, and it's called Chips. This place serves 40 different kinds of pancake. And so we were going there, and I see the menu, 40 different. I mean, I'm not on Weight Watchers at that point or whatever. So, I mean, I wanted to try it out, right? They had on the menu sweet potato pancakes, and that was served with like a marshmallow topping. When I tell you it tasted like, the sweet potato, that casserole or whatever you want to call it, that is made on Thanksgiving with the marshmallows and the maple syrup and all that, it tasted just like that, and it was pancakes. It tasted just like it. That day, was my first sugar crash. So now here we are, whatever, 20 some odd years later. A zero sugar soda started the process of bringing my sugar back up. And yet they have the whole country believing it's perfectly safe. I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know that I ever trusted that a diet soda or a zero sugar soda was ever safe. Let's just start that from the beginning. But when you look at the ADA website, American Diabetes Association, their recommendations of what breakfast should be are a breakfast that will help you keep diabetes. And considering that the overwhelming majority of Americans that have diabetes have type 2 and literally can cure themselves with a healthy lifestyle. Their recommendations that are given to these people perpetuate chronic diabetes. And they trust the system. I don't know what to tell you. All I could tell you is what I experienced. It was a couple days later, I saw this video, and it made me think of all of the people now taking Ozempic. What is their consequence coming? We won't know their consequence for 10 years. Think about it that way. It took me how many years to figure out my consequence? Almost 15, 20 years. To figure out that the hypoglycemia I was experiencing was direct result of having gastric bypass surgery. And now there are people lining up for Ozempic and everything else. What consequence will they face 10 years from now that they'll think in their mind, this wasn't my fault? It's not because of me that this happened. And scream and cry, why me? Why me? The consequence to that is coming at some point. But I saw this video online, and things are removed so quickly that I decided to screen record it, and I'm going to play it for you right now. So I'm going to switch over so you guys can see the video. And I'm just going to stay quiet, and I'm going to hit play on the video.
Found a way to hack Ozempic, and they're doing it in secret. The story is actually crazy. Okay, so there's a food laboratory in Northern California called Matson that is, quote unquote, creating the future of food. It's run by this guy named Justin Shimmick, PhD. So he is a smart guy, and he has monetized his intelligence quite well. It says for nearly 50 years, Matson has conceptualized, developed, branded, and scaled hundreds of product lines, and in the process created billions of dollars in revenue for clients. And right now, their clients, Big Food, is asking them to do experiments that will reformulate ingredients so that their food can bypass the effects of Ozempic, Wegovy, and other GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Because from a financial perspective, people on these weight loss drugs are buying less food. Walmart CEO John Furner recently told Bloomberg News that the company is seeing signs that people taking GLP-1 agonist appetite suppressant medications are buying, quote, less units, slightly less calories, which equals less profit. New York Times has reported that sales are down in sweet baked goods and snacks, and the industry is weathering a downturn. That's a big problem for these food executives. So in response, the food companies are designing what they call GLP-1 optimized products. In layman's terms, they're trying to make the food more addictive, even more addictive than they already are, because we know that food is already pretty addictive. Quote, there is little the industry hasn't tried to keep health-conscious consumers eating. Companies conceal clouds of nostalgic aromas into packaging to trigger Proustian reverie. When they discovered that noisier chips induced people to eat more of them, snack engineers turned up the crunch. Food technologists found a way to amplify the intensity of artificial sweeteners to hundreds of times beyond sugar's natural flavor. The structure of salt crystals can be altered to accelerate the speed at which they absorb into the chemical pathways that signal saltiness, allowing the brain to perceive the flavor more intensely. In the chemosensory world, referring to the science of how chemicals provoke sensations, almost anything is possible. Yeah, I suppose almost anything is possible, but I think the certainty here is that we're going to be left with a bunch of people who are still obese taking drugs with, pretty bad side effects that no longer work. That, I would say, is not ideal. And worse yet, it's all being done in secret, okay? When asked, Justin Shimmick wouldn't say which companies he was working with to develop these GLP-1 products, saying, quote, "We are professional secret keepers." These people are sick.
Do you see now? I mean, this is just one small glimpse. Do you see or understand why I'm so passionate about what I do here? Why I am so incredibly intense and why everything out of my mouth is life or death? If they are spending billions of dollars to try to make sure you get addicted again to the food because a drug is preventing you from being addicted now, what else will they do? Can you see now that the only real way to get ahead in this is to start eating real food, whole foods? Eating whole foods alone will eventually break the addiction you have to all of the processed nonsense, first of all. The thing is, if it's part of an animal, if it's the meat of an animal, eat it. If it came from an animal, eggs, milk, cheese, eat it. If it grew out of the ground, eat it. If you can't find in nature what you're eating, if what the ingredients label is on the back looks like a laboratory experiment, stop eating it. It is not food. And this includes everything you perceive to be healthy. They stick the word protein on everything now. And people think it's healthy just because of a word on a package. If you want protein, eat meat, eat eggs. Stop this nonsense. The protein in a protein bar is not going to absorb the same way the protein from an animal is going to absorb. But you know what? Take the big multi-billion-dollar conglomerates' advice. Take their advice. The people that have everything to gain and nothing to lose from your death. I sit here every week. I have nothing to gain from this. I have only time away from my family to lose. Over the last few weeks, we have been talking about taking advantage of the new system that is Weight Watchers. I gave you a homework to create a baseline. The baseline was for you to track with 97% accuracy, for you to weigh and measure all foods in your mouth. Doesn't matter how many points it comes out to be. Track as you normally eat to create the baseline. So now that you have done that, because I'm going to trust you. We're all adults here. I'm not going to sit here and check your homework. This is your life. I don't lose any sleep by you not doing this. And I'm living this so I know it works. Now you have a measure of protein that you ate every day for 7 days. You have a measure of carbohydrates that you ate every day for 7 days. And you have a measure of fat that you ate every day for 7 days. Let's average those numbers out to figure out what is your baseline. Okay? Because figuring out what your baseline is the beginning of your true transition. Now, I showed you last week the page from Christine's book. And you saw, a bunch of different categories you're in, and maybe a bunch of you bought the book, and maybe you guys skipped the chapters and went straight to the questionnaires, and you already know what your macro type is, and you already want to make some changes. But how do I go from a percentage to a measurement? How? How do I do that? That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay? That is what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to start with something called caloriecalculator.net. Okay? Now, I'm going to transition here. We need, because the system you're using has what they call 0-point foods, and this is a wonderful thing because so many people would benefit just by concentrating on eating those alone. Because the overwhelming majority of 0-point foods right now on WW are whole foods. So just that transition alone would take people away from ultra-processed foods and change their lives. But because some of the foods are 0 points, we don't understand the true impact really on how the macros are going to work. It's going to throw things off a bit. But WW also gave calories. And so we're going to take that and we're going to use it to our advantage because we'll have an extra guidepost because there's no 0-point food that doesn't have calories. It's that simple. So this is caloriecalculator.net. And so based on my age, my sex, my height, and my weight, and the amount of activity I put in per week, I will be given a mathematical equation for how much calories to eat per day. So I'm going to do this live with you right now. I'm 47, male, 5'4". What did I say? 226.2 pounds, and I walk 5 times a week. So moderate activity 4 to 5 times a week. We're going to leave that just as it is, and I'm going to hit calculate. Now, can you see this? I'm going to zoom in further. I'm going to try to get this nice and big for you guys. Okay. So if I want to maintain my body weight, I need to eat 2,655 calories per day. That's how much calories I need to eat just to stay the same. And this is in regards to the activity I do too, right? Because I put in 4 to 5 days, right? Now, if I want to lose half a pound a week, I eat 2,405 calories. If I want to lose 1 pound a week, my calorie limit should be 2,155. And if I want extreme weight loss, which is like 2 pounds a week, I can go to 1,655 calories. Now, I never aim for anything lower than 1 pound a week. To me, this is unrealistic. You're not going to keep it. So with that in mind, 2,155 calories. Now we're going to our next stop. Our next stop is the macro calculator. I have it open already for you. Now we remember my results from last week. According to the book, 37.5% of my caloric intake should be protein. 36% of my caloric intake should be fat. And 26.5% should be carbohydrates. Now, the calorie calculators aren't not going to allow you to be so specific. So you're going to be doing some rounding. But here's a clue. Nothing's ever perfect. Nothing. So we'll take this and we'll round up or round down based on your judgment, right? This is how I did it. I upped the protein to 40%. I reduced it to 35 on the fat, and I have it as, I'm sorry, I increased it. Hold on one sec. I have it here. So why am I guessing? This is the closest I can come to what the book says. 40% protein, 35% fat, 25% carbohydrates. That is the closest I can get to what my macro type is. And now, what do we need to convert these percentages to grams? We need the calories we just calculated. So like I said, I only go for the 1 pound weight loss, 2155. And now I hit calculate. Now I have some real numbers here. Real numbers. It gives me two different. It's telling me, number one, that carbohydrates should be 539 calories of my day. Protein should be 862 calories of my day. And fat should be 754 calories of my day. That's how optimally, based on those percentages, that's how many calories of each of the macros I should eat every day. But let's take it further. The grams per. 135 grams of carbohydrates, 216 grams of protein, and 84 grams of fat. This is what Christine's book has gone for. Now, if you have been with me quite a while, you already know that I have dropped this to less because of a diagnosis, and I was trying to heal myself with a certain lifestyle in order to stay away from medication. I have been successful in that. So what Christine's book recommends me, I no longer do, but it's only out of the desire to not be on medication for the rest of my life that I am doing it the way I'm doing it. Not because Christine's book wasn't good enough. Because when I was eating, because I started off with Christine's results here, and when I was doing it, I was enjoying, I felt content. Okay, I'll just say it like that. I felt content. I felt like it was just good. Everything was just fine. But then I got handed a diagnosis and I had to make some serious choices. And that choice was take medication that suppresses my immune system and makes me the bubble boy, and I have to worry about the freaking common cold coming after me and killing me because this one thing that won't go away, even if I suppress my immune system, is basically opening the door for all of the demons in hell to come after me with every single sickness available. So I decided to risk it all and change drastically how I eat. Now, I'm going to show you in the Weight Watchers app a typical day for me. This is a typical Monday. Okay? Now, you guys know I've been tracking macros for years. Weight Watchers only introduced them recently. So all of my real tracking no longer even happens in the app because I've been tracking for years in a different app at this point. So, here we go. According to the current plan, my breakfast is 8 points. And this is what I eat for breakfast. 3 eggs, 2 slices of American cheese, boar's head sliced American cheese, Mazzetta cherry peppers, 2 slices of Kirkland signature bacon, and a cooked bone-in pork chop. All of the other stuff besides the pork chop gets cooked into an omelet. And then I have the pork chop with it. Every single time I've changed my breakfast in the 6 years I'm on Weight Watchers, I always thought to myself when this started, this is it. I'll never change my breakfast again. Every single time. And the last time I changed my breakfast, I changed it out of being forced to change it. I didn't change it by choice. Well, by choice, but because of a diagnosis, right? But now I'm eating this breakfast 7 days a week. And I can honestly tell you, it would be, I would fight you to death if you asked me to change this breakfast. I have never felt so content. Now, depending on the size of that pork chop, like this Monday was a nice one. 290 grams the pork chop weighed. Now, there's people that remove the weight of the bone. I'm too lazy to do that. I just leave the weight of the bone in there. But it was a 290 gram pork chop. But according to the current plan, that's 0 points. The only question I have about this, the only thing I don't really trust in my breakfast with Weight Watchers, is that every single pork chop that was available in the app said lean. And I am sure the pork chop I have is not lean. I mean, it has the fat kind of wrapping around it like any typical pork chop. I don't know if that I can consider that lean. And it's not trimmed. So I specifically didn't choose one that's trimmed. But those were the only choices I had. So I went with what was there. The other app I use is much more accurate with, what kind of pork chop I'm grabbing. And I trust it a little more based on fat content alone. Okay? So now let me go to my lunch and dinner. And you notice that there's 9 points left for the day. So that's after the whole day is tracked. So the lunch is basically a hamburger, just the patty, no bun. Grass-fed burger, a 1/3 of a pound patty, comes up 13 points in the app. With that, I have 2 spears of deli pickle, kosher dill pickle. Okay? And then for dinner on a Monday night, 13 ounces of grilled chicken breast and another 2 spears of the deli style dill pickle. Here was the end of the day macros. 254 grams of protein, 6 grams total carbohydrates, 88 grams of fat. Now, one thing I don't trust here is the fat content. Because of the pork chop I was chosen, I think that's throwing this off. In the other app I use, the fat content is much higher and the calorie content is right where it needs to be at 21 and change. But this is what it all translates to be. So now I just calculated what the website told me. So let's put them side by side. We'll put them side by side. Like I said, I was at the calories according to my other app. So even though you see a discrepancy here, I think that's just because of the limitation of which pork chop I could choose. But my grams is 135 grams of carbohydrates, again, according to the book. But I'm trying for a carnivore lifestyle in order to fix an autoimmune condition. And that's why it's so drastically different. And that's why the protein is so much higher and the fat is so much higher than the fat that I go for is so much higher than what the book recommends. Because the signature in all this is to avoid carbohydrates at all costs to prevent the flare-ups. Since living this lifestyle as close as I've gotten, I know it's working because the wounds that were on my body healed as a direct result. I had wounds that were probably the size of a golf ball. You know, what is a golf ball diameter? 1.5 inches? What is it? I've had them as big as that going down my leg. I have some other wounds on my arms. They would not heal for months at a time. I was a walking getting ready to have an infection. I was a walking infection ready to happen at any given moment. Okay. And this lifestyle changed all of that for me. I would recommend carnivore lifestyle to anyone who's trying to figure out if the illnesses that they have are a direct result of something they eat. And the reason I say that is the carnivore lifestyle is the easiest elimination diet because you cannot say you're not satisfied. Okay? The pickles you see that are on my plate were only because of a recommendation that fermented vegetables help this autoimmune condition too. So they're the only reason I haven't let go of the pickles. But to essentially have worked this hard and brought the carbohydrates this low, and at the time where I got this diagnosis, I was taking in around 170 grams per day carbohydrates. What does this all mean to you? Your baseline compared to what the book says you should be at. How different are they? That's the next question you're going to be asking yourself. What does the book say I should be at on carbohydrates? 135 grams. What am I at? 500 grams. What am I going to do to start to bring that number down? I'm always talking to you guys about 8-week increments. Do things in 8-week increments. Small changes, 8 weeks at a time, over endless periods of time here. You have all the time in the world. Do not do this all at once. You are going to fail. And then you're going to blame yourself for failing. And you should blame yourself, but not for the reason that you're blaming yourself. You should blame yourself because you did it all at once. Baby steps, 8-week increments for however long it takes. You decide how much to drop it. If you're at 600 and you need to be at 135, what's my first jump? Can I handle life at 400? So we're going to take 400 grams off. That's going to drop the calories. That's going to drop the fat, whatever it drops. And you're going to have to add food elsewhere because wherever you're high on, you're going to be low on something else. For me, I was low on protein and low on fat when I started all this. So every time I removed a set of carbohydrates, I added protein and fat. This is how you see how I'm here at such different numbers now. This is how I got here. Small, 8-week increments over long periods of time. And in this transition from the baseline to the book, in this transition, you're asking yourself a few questions here. What am I cutting to bring down? I'm going to use my story here as this example. What am I cutting to bring down carbohydrates? What am I increasing to bring up protein for the next 8 weeks? So if I'm dropping from 600 to 400, that's 200 grams of carbohydrates. And what am I doing to add additional protein? Right? And you're going to make those numbers happen for the next 8 weeks. So that after 8 weeks, if you're consistently at 400 grams of carbohydrates a day and whatever you decide to go up on protein, Now you can make the next change. And from 400, you can go to 300. You can go to 200. Whatever it is you want to do. Maybe you're thinking like, okay, this jump from 400 or lower is going to be harder. So it's going to make it a smaller jump. So we'll go, instead of going from 400 to 200, we'll go to 400 to 300. This is your world. You decide. You know the ultimate goal. And you know you need to take small steps to get there. 8-week increments. You know you have to make this consistent over time. These are the things you know. The rest is up to you. The rest is up to you. If you need the help, go to my website, www.therantingweightwatcher.com. Download the document. If you scroll all the way down to the webpage, download the document called the Checklist Challenge. This is a roadmap to creating behaviors that are consistent. And you can use that model to formulate how you're going to make this transition. You can see how I structured the roadmap, and you can make the decisions based on going from 600 grams of carbohydrates to 400 for the next 8 weeks, and so on. It's not hard. It's easy to say, it's easy to plan, it's hard to execute. You've been attached to these things for a very long time. But in the end, nobody told you this would be easy. So the rest is up to you. I can't make you do this. Your family can't make you do this. Your kids who want you to succeed so much because they want mom or dad to stick around, they can't make you do this. Your wife who wants you to live and so you guys can have and grow old together and live long, healthy, happy lives, she wants you to do this. Your husband of however many years wants to know that he has so many more years with you, and he just wants to be happy and see you happy. But he can't make you do it either. None of these people can make you do what is necessary. The question is not whether you can do it. That's never the question. It's never been the question, no matter how many times you've said it. You are the most capable person you know. The question will always be, are you willing? Are you willing to do the hard things now so you can have the life you want? Because the saying goes, do what is easy and your life will be hard. But do what is hard and your life will be easy. So if you take that in mind, literally, if you live like no one else is willing to live right now, you can live like no one else will be able to live years from now. But the choice is yours. I'm not a salesman here. I have nothing to gain from you changing your life. And yet, I sit here and at this microphone, week after week, for hours and hours at this microphone, telling people to change their lives. There are big things happening in this world. And you could bury your head in the sand and pretend they don't exist, and you can ignore that video I showed you earlier of billion-dollar companies working hard and endlessly and tirelessly to get by a drug to make sure you stay addicted to their drug-ridden food. You could just go on living like that and blame the world. Why is this happening to me? Or you can take charge. You can face the accountability fairy and say, hey, this really is my fault. So now, let's get to work to fix it. Because there's nothing but time. It's not too late. You are the author and hero of your story. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.